Hi there. Welcome back to Haunting Vales. Tonight's mystery begins not on the ground, but above it. In the quiet of St. Mary Mead, as the village slept, someone reported hearing soft steps overhead. Not in the attic, but on the rooftop. At dawn, the truth became even stranger. A trail of footprints ran across the tiles, stopping abruptly at the edge, with no sign of anyone climbing up, and no sign of anyone climbing down. When Miss Marple hears of it, she doesn't laugh, nor does she frighten easily. She simply adjusts her shawl, peers up at the roof, and whispers, "No one walks where they cannot return, unless they had help." The village calls it impossible, but Miss Marple knows the impossible often hides the most human of crimes. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe for more haunting mysteries. Chapter 1. The Footprints on the Roof. Morning in St. Mary's Hollow usually arrived gently. A pale sky, soft snow, quiet chimneys, and nothing loud enough to disturb a soul. But on this particular dawn, Miss Marple felt something wrong before she even understood it. She had risen early, pulled back her curtains, and let the dim light fall across her bedroom. That was when she saw them. Footprints on the rooftop of the cottage across the lane. Miss Marple leaned closer to the cold glass, her breath forming a faint cloud. There was no mistake. A line of clear footprints crossed the snow-covered roof of Leonard Graves' home. But they had no beginning, no end, no marks leading up, no marks leading down. Not a single disturbance in the snow below. Footprints that should not exist. Miss Marple dressed quickly, wrapped her scarf, and stepped out into the cold morning air. The village still slept, unaware that anything unusual had happened. The world was silent except for the soft sound of snow under her boots. Across the lane, she studied the rooftop again. The footprints looked calm, measured, as though someone had walked slowly across the roof in the dead of night. But no one could have reached that height without a ladder, and the untouched snow below proved no ladder had ever been placed. She knocked on Leonard Graves' front door, and no answer. "Mr. Graves?" She called gently. Still nothing. Miss Marple walked around to the back of the cottage. The snow was thick and untouched, except for one thing. On the back door handle, a dark smear. She leaned in. Not dirt, not paint, dried blood. A cold breath passed through her, one she could not blame on the wind. Leonard Graves was elderly, solitary, and not well liked. But he was a man with predictable habits. And predictable habits rarely ended with dried blood on a door and impossible footprints on a roof. Miss Marple turned immediately. She needed Constable Harper. She found him near the churchyard, stamping the cold from his boots. "Constable," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "There is something you must see." Harper followed her with quick steps, but the moment he saw the rooftop, he stopped short. "What is that?" he whispered. "Exactly what it looks like," Miss Marple replied. "Footprints where no person could walk." Harper circled the cottage, searching for a ladder, a tree, anything. "No way up," he muttered. "No way down." Miss Marple nodded. "And the back door appears to have blood on the handle." Harper stiffened. "We're going inside." He broke the front lock with a firm shoulder. The door swung open slowly, like something inside was resisting the light. Inside was cold. Too cold. They moved room by room. Kitchen, study, sitting room. Each space untouched, quiet, almost frozen. A single teacup lay on its side. A book on the table was open but marked in the middle, as though someone had stopped reading halfway through a sentence. Then they reached the bedroom. Leonard Graves lay on the floor beside his bed. His body turned slightly as though he had reached for something before collapsing. His expression was fixed in a mixture of confusion and fear. Harper knelt beside him, but both he and Miss Marple knew the truth instantly that he was gone. Miss Marple scanned the room, her eyes catching every detail with calm precision. Nothing was broken, nothing stolen, no sign of a struggle, no mark on his skin, no reason for his sudden death, except one. By his hand lay a clump of snow, Inside the house, snow that had not melted. Miss Marple whispered, "Someone was here." Harper looked up sharply. "Who?" The doors were locked. "The person who visited did not come through a door," she said softly. Harper frowned as he stood. "Then how?" "That is what we must find out," she said. "And we should speak to Mrs. Elwood. Her window faces this cottage." They found Mrs. Elwood already at her door, small and sharp-eyed, wrapped in a wool coat. "I saw you two heading to Leonard's place," she said. "Something happened, didn't it?" Miss Marple nodded. "I'm afraid he has passed." Mrs. Elwood sighed, but her eyes stayed sharp. "Then I should tell you what I heard last night." Harper leaned forward. "What did you hear?" "A step," she said, "right outside my window. A single step, not on the ground. Higher, too high." She glanced up toward the rooftops, like someone walking above the cottages. Harper's face lost color. "And you looked?" "I did, and saw no one, because no one should have been able to stand where that sound came from." Miss Marple thanked her gently, and as she and Harper walked away, Harper whispered, "Miss Marple, do you think someone really walked on the roofs last night?" She looked him in the eye. "No human did." Harper swallowed. "Then what made those footprints?" Miss Marple looked once more at the cottage roof, the prints still clear, still perfect, still impossible. "That," she said, "is the question we must answer before night falls. Because if someone reached that roof without touching the ground, they can reach every roof in this village." Her voice grew quieter, and every window. The snow settled around them, soft, soundless, and cold. The mystery had already begun. Chapter 2. The Shadow Above the Village. The village did not know yet. Snow-covered roofs glowed gently under the pale morning sun, unaware of the footprints that did not belong to any human, and unaware of the man who had died with a clump of snow in his hand. But Miss Marple knew something else. Whatever had reached Leonard Graves' roof was not finished. Constable Harper walked beside her, his boots crunching nervously through the snow. He kept glancing upward, as if expecting something to step across the rooftops again. "Miss Marple," he said quietly, "what do you think we're dealing with?" She did not answer right away. She was thinking, always thinking. "Not something impossible," she said at last. "Only something we do not understand yet." Harper rubbed his hands together, not from cold, but from unease. Snow shouldn't stay frozen inside a warm house. And those footprints, yes, Miss Marple said softly. They begin where they should not. They reached Leonard's garden again. The wind had picked up, brushing thin streams of snow from the hedges, revealing patches of frozen earth beneath. Miss Marple paused. "Look there, on the ground." Harper knelt and saw it too. A faint impression in the snow near the side of the cottage. Not a footprint, but a mark. A long, narrow indentation, almost like something had been dragged or pulled that it led toward the wall beneath the roof. "What is that?" Harper whispered. Miss Marple traced the mark with her gloved finger. A sign of movement, but not a step. Something was pressed here. Something heavy enough to mark the snow, but not shaped like a boot. Harper swallowed. "So someone climbed." "No," she said calmly. "If someone climbed, we would see handholds. Shoe marks. Disturbed snow. This," she gestured slowly, "is as if something touched the ground only briefly, and then rose." Harper stared. "Rose? You mean lifted?" Miss Marple gave no answer. She didn't need to. The silent double inside Leonard's cottage. The doctor had arrived, checking the body with slow, practiced movements. Miss Marple watched from a distance, her eyes on small details others overlooked. The window by the bed had thin lines of frost on the inside of the glass. That was wrong. Windows froze outside, not inside. Unless something cold, unnaturally cold, had been inside the room long enough to touch it, the doctor straightened. No sign of struggle, no signs of illness. His heart simply stopped. Harper shook his head. But why would he fall? Look at his hands. He clawed at the floor. "Fear," Miss Marple murmured. "He saw something. Something close to him." She knelt beside the clump of snow again. This time she noticed something new. A tiny thread, dark, thin, almost invisible. Harper crouched beside her. Is that clothing? No, she whispered. It is coarser than cloth. More like a thin strand of rope. Harper frowned. A rope? But how does rope leave footprints on a roof? Miss Marple held the thread up to the light. The sun revealed a faint glimmer, as if the thread was coated with frost. This is a clue, she said. But we still lack context. Harper breathed out slowly. Where do we start next? She stood, with the only person who may have seen the visitor more clearly. Harper blinked. Mrs. Elwood? No, Miss Marple said. Not her. She pointed toward the far cottage, beside the old chestnut tree. Daniel Reeves, the night watchman. Harper's eyes widened. He patrols past this lane around midnight. Miss Marple nodded. Exactly when Mr. Graves likely died. The night watchman's F.E.R. Daniel Reeves was a quiet man who kept to himself. He lived in a narrow cottage with a wide porch. Miss Marple noticed the lantern on the porch rail still held a faint flicker, as if it had burned through most of the night. When Reeves opened the door, his face was pale. Miss Marple. Constable. His voice cracked slightly. I heard what happened. You heard quickly, Harper said. I didn't need to hear, Reeves replied. I knew something was wrong before dawn. Miss Marple stepped closer. Tell us what you saw. Reeves licked his lips, his fingers trembling slightly. I saw a shadow. Harper stiffened. A person. Reeves shook his head hard. No, not a person. A shape. Something moving from rooftop to rooftop. Miss Marple exchanged a sharp look with Harper. What time? She asked. Just after midnight, Reeves said. There was no wind, no snow falling. Everything was still. And then I heard a thump, like something landing. Not on the road, not on the ground, but above. His voice lowered. I looked up, and there it was. Miss Marple prompted gently. Describe it. Reeves swallowed. Tall, thin, moving fast. I couldn't see details. The moon was behind it, but its steps were too long, too smooth. It didn't climb. It didn't jump. It moved, like it was gliding. Harper's face drained of color. Gliding? Reeves nodded. From Leonard's roof toward the old chestnut tree. Miss Marple's eyes sharpened. The tree? Yes, Reeves whispered. It stopped there. For a moment. Then it disappeared behind the branches. Miss Marple turned immediately. Constable, we must inspect that tree. Reeves grabbed her arm suddenly. Don't go near it. Harper stepped forward. Why not? Reeves's voice shook. Because whatever I saw, it wasn't walking. It wasn't climbing. It looked like it was searching. Miss Marple gently removed his hand from her sleeve. Fear is natural, Mr. Reeves, she said softly. But we cannot let fear answer questions for us. The tree that held IT's own SA, the old chestnut tree, had stood in the village for nearly a century. Children used to climb it in summer. Now its leafless branches stretched like twisted arms into the cold sky. Beneath it, the snow had gathered in deep, untouched drifts. Harper looked around nervously. I don't see anything. Look closer, Miss Marple said. At the base of the tree, half hidden under snow, she found something small and metallic. She brushed the snow aside. A button, old, dark metal, the kind found on heavy coats. Harper took it carefully. Could it belong to Mr. Graves? No, Miss Marple said. His coat was wool with wooden buttons. Then whose is this? Miss Marple looked back toward Leonard's cottage, then toward the rooftops that formed a jagged line across the snowy village. The person who stood on that roof, she whispered that Harper's voice was barely audible. So we're looking for someone who moves across roofs, leaves no tracks on the ground, and lost a button beneath a tree. Miss Marple nodded. And that person was near Mr. Graves shortly before he died. Harper stared at her. What kind of person does that? Miss Marple's voice was quiet, steady. One who did not come to the village by normal means. Snow began to fall again, soft, gentle flakes that carried no warmth. Miss Marple looked up toward the rooftops. Something was watching them. She felt it. Harper saw her expression. What is it? Miss Marple spoke without looking away. This village is being observed, Constable, and whoever left those footprints may already be planning their next visit. And somewhere above them, unseen among the drifting snowflakes, something shifted, something waiting. Chapter 3. The Visitor in the Snow. The sky had darkened early, as it often did in winter. Clouds stacked themselves like silent walls above St. Mary's Hollow, and the air carried a stillness that felt heavier than before. The village lights glowed warm behind windows, but outside, the world felt hollow and watching. Miss Marple stood near the old chestnut tree, her coat gathered tight around her. Constable Harper paced nearby, glancing upward every few seconds as though expecting something to leap from roof to roof again. Miss Marple, he said in a low voice, we should not be out here alone. Not after what we've seen. We are not alone, Miss Marple replied calmly. And that is precisely why we must stay. Harper swallowed. You think it will return? Miss Marple looked at the marks in the snow around the tree. Whatever visited Mr. Graves came here afterward. And people, or creatures, tend to return to places where they left something behind. Harper glanced at the button in his pocket. You think the owner will come back for it? No, she said softly. I think the owner will come back for something else. Harper's voice shook. What else? Miss Marple turned her eyes toward the rooftops, the line of snow shimmering under the fading light. Observation, she whispered. It watched Mr. Graves before he died. It watched this tree after. And now, she pointed gently. It may be watching us. Harper froze, his breath visible in the cold air. Do you see something? No, Miss Marple said. But I feel something. The branches above them creaked, though there was no wind. Snow dust fell from the highest limbs of the chestnut tree in a soft, controlled sweep, as if brushed by a careful hand. Harper's voice dropped. Miss Marple, that isn't the wind. No, she whispered. It isn't. The clue in the branches. Miss Marple stepped closer to the trunk of the tree and looked up. The branches were twisted and old, too thin to hold a person's weight. But one branch, high, near the top, had a deep split in the bark, and in that split hung something dark. Miss Marple motioned for Harper. Lift me up a bit. Harper blinked. What? No, absolutely not. You might slip. I assure you I will not, she said, steady as stone. Harper sighed heavily but helped her balance against the trunk. Miss Marple reached up and pinched the small object from the branch. A second button, exactly matching the first. Harper took it gently. So whoever was here stood in this tree. But how? Miss Marple stepped back onto the snow. We now know that the visitor was not gliding or floating. It was climbing. But there are no footprints, Harper whispered. Because it did not climb from the ground, Miss Marple said. Her voice was calm, focused, resolute. It climbed from above. Harper looked up sharply. From the roofs. Yes. Harper frowned. But how could someone move across roofs without a ladder or marks? No human has that ability. Not many, Miss Marple said. But one in this village does. Harper stared. What are you suggesting? Miss Marple folded her hands. Do you remember the Reeves boy? Young Thomas Reeves. Harper blinked. Daniel Reeves's nephew? The boy who worked as a chimney sweeper before the trade died out. Yes, she said. He climbs for a living. He moves across roofs as easily as others walk on roads. Harper's eyes widened. But Thomas died years ago. Everyone knows that. Miss Marple nodded slowly. That is what they believed. But Daniel Reeves never buried a body. He only claimed the boy had vanished after a fall. Harper's breath froze. You think the boy is alive? Miss Marple's gaze drifted to the rooftop of Leonard's cottage. I think he grew up with uncommon strength, uncommon agility, and perhaps uncommon darkness. A life spent in shadows creates habits that never leave. Harper stepped back. You're saying? He returned. Miss Marple spoke quietly. And I believe he has been watching this village from the rooftops for years. A sudden creak above them. Sharp, unmistakable. cut through the air. Harper spun. What was that? Miss Marple did not move. I believe our watcher has arrived. The figure above them, the rooftops, had turned almost black against the evening sky. Snow slid softly from the edges, falling in small streaks. Harper held his breath as he squinted upward. Then he froze. Something moved. A tall, thin figure stepped into view on the roof of the cottage opposite the tree. Not walking, not running, just existing, as though it had always been there. Harper reached for his baton. Miss Marple, she lifted a hand. Do not provoke him. The figure stood perfectly still. Snow continued to fall around it, but none touched its coat. Its head tilted slightly, watching them. Harper's voice trembled. Thomas Reeves. The figure did not answer. It only shifted its weight, turning toward the chestnut tree. Miss Marple stepped closer, her voice calm. You returned to a village that forgot you. A village that left you to climb roofs for warmth in winter. A village that never asked where you went. The figure's shoulders rose with a slow breath. You visited Mr. Graves, she continued. You went to his window. But he saw you, and fear struck him before he could speak. Harper whispered, and that fear killed him. Yes, she said. Not violence. Not attack. Only fear. A long silence stretched between the rooftops and the snow. Miss Marple's voice softened. Come down. No one here wishes you harm. The figure shifted again, slow, uncertain, and then it stepped backward. Harper panicked. He's running. No, Miss Marple said sharply. He's leaving. Thomas Reeves moved with impossible speed across the roof, crossing to the next cottage with a long, controlled leap. Snow sprayed behind him, leaving prints that began and ended in midair. Within seconds, he vanished into the darkness beyond the rooftops. Harper stared at the empty ridge. What now? Should we chase him? Call for help. Miss Marple shook her head. He will not return tonight. Not after being seen. Not after being understood. Harper exhaled shakily. Then it's over? She looked at the footprints on the roofs, prints that slowly filled with falling snow. For now, she said. The wind carried her words softly across the lane, and the village settled into silence once more. Epilogue. The snow that remembered by morning. The rooftops were smooth again, scrubbed clean by fresh snowfall. The strange line of footprints was gone, swallowed by winter's quiet hand. Daniel Reeves reported that someone had come to his porch in the night and taken the old coat he kept there. A coat missing 2 buttons. Miss Marple sat by her window, watching the new snow fall lightly over the village roofs. She knew Thomas Reeves was still out there, a watcher in the winter, a shadow above the village. But she also knew something else. He would not harm the place he once called home, not unless someone forced him to. And as long as she lived, Miss Marple would make sure no one ever tried. Hi there, and thank you for joining us in this chilling journey above the snowy rooftops of St. Mary's Hollow. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to Haunting Vales for more mysteries, more suspense, and more shadows waiting just beyond the light. Stay curious, and stay watching.